Short break here coming to preview the Community Shield matchup between Manchester City and Manchester United. Now, the storylines here. Number one, this is the first trophy essentially for the season. No matter how big or not big you think of this Community Shield, I happen to not be the biggest fan of this game. Probably won't even watch the game, quite frankly. I'll watch a replay later that night though, so I can cover it on the show. Don't think I'm gonna watch it. It's 9 a.m. my time, and I'm gonna be tuning into some other Olympic events. Maybe have it on the site to keep an eye on it, but I'll really focus in on the night because I'm not the biggest of bigs in terms of the Community Shield. Yeah, it's a trophy, but it's a glorified preseason game essentially, in my opinion. But the teams are gonna take it seriously. The players are gonna play. Full teams for both teams gonna play, and it's gonna be interesting. With Manchester United, they want to start off this season on the high of how they ended last season, and they want to replicate how they finished last season and start this season, and that's beating Manchester City in Wembley. If you want to go back, a few months ago, do one of those episode reminders at the beginning of the show. Before we start this episode, this is what you missed. Manchester City lost to United in the FA Cup final this past season, which denied them the domestic trouble, Manchester City, and United were able to, and essentially that saved Ten Hag's job. Now they get to play against Manchester City again in the Community Shield at Wembley Stadium. Same sort of similar vibes, and they want to replicate what they did the end of last season, and they want to start it off this season. Now, obviously, that's probably the only thing they want to replicate from how they had last season compared to what they're about to do this season, because obviously last season was a complete and utter disaster for Manchester United. But it's still potential to be a decent encounter. So let's just talk about some of the things you need to know. So this is the first time that Manchester United and City have met in the Community Shield since 2011. That's all the way back in the Sir Alex Ferguson times. United were actually able to beat the victories in that. United are the record winners in terms of the Community Shield, winning this 21 times. City, they won 4 consecutive Premier Leagues. So there's that. Eric Ten Hag, speaking about this game, said it's about a trophy. So we will put out a team that is very competitive to win this trophy. Pep Guardiola said they will go for it as well. It's important. It's a final against United, but part of it is to try to refine ourselves step by step after a break from most of the players, Pep Guardiola said. There's been a lot of Manchester derbies that have been happening at Wembley Stadium over the past few years or so. You have go back to the FA Cup final last year, not last year, but the year before that, and also the FA Cup final a few months ago. And now this, Manchester City versus United we've seen this at Wembley a lot. This game, by the way, will not go to extra time. If the game is tied after 90 minutes, it's going to go straight to penalties, which I'm sure the players will appreciate. They don't want to play in extra time this early in the season, this close to the start of the season. But yes, I think, Eric Ten Hag, I think this game is important for him in terms of, he starts off the season bad. In terms of Premier League, he will get fired. So this is a sort of game that you can build some positive momentum entering the season, especially of a lot of the first team players of all your first team players that are going to be involved, and you're kind of take this seriously. There's a chance that this is a sort of tournament that could, this is a sort of game that can build some sort of confidence entering the start of the season. Now it's an injury ravaged Manchester United. Leno Yoro that came in there's the standout signing for getting him for 62 million euros. The 20-year-old young center half that came that's expected to change things at United was sought after by clubs like Real Madrid and PSG. Well, he's going to be out for 3 months. Rasmus Højlund, the only real sort of striker that you have at the club. Yes, they signed Xerxes, but he's not a goal scorer. Only scored single-digit goals in the Eredivisie this past year. Not Eredivisie, in Serie A this past year. You have issues there. You don't really have a number 9. You don't have you don't know who you're gonna play at center half. They just looking like they're gonna have to rely on the same old Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof. Again, that's shaky. You're going up against the Manchester City that's gonna bring their A game. Haaland, Doku, Jack Grealish, who has had a pretty good preseason. Manchester City, they're coming on good form. A lot of their players did do pretty well in preseason. So, it's going to be interesting. Obviously City, they're going to be the favorites. They are the favorites. Especially when you saw that Pep Guardiola said the players are going to go for it, which we assume that he's going to put the first team players out there. And maybe there's an element of them, you want to right your wrong that you did, just 11 weeks ago in that FA Cup final. Maybe they used that game as some sort of motivation. But honestly, I don't really see that because, why would you use a Community Shield game? Why would you try to, why would you need, not why would you need, but how is an FA, how you win this Community Shield is kind of right your wrong of losing that FA Cup final. It's really not. So I don't think that's going to be much motivation for them. But yeah, I think City, they just have that ruthless mentality of trying to, needing to win every single trophy that they're playing for. They have that mentality. They've had that mentality under Pep Guardiola. They've been very, very ruthless over the years in terms of, and yes, Community Shield doesn't mean much, but I'm talking about in general, Pep Guardiola, he's always, his teams have always been in and about when it comes to the AFL Cups and the FA Cups. They always make it far, and maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that, even if he benches his guys and play his second team players, they're still world-class players because of how loaded Manchester City is, which has something to do with it. But I think Guardiola just happens to take it a little bit more seriously in terms of those trophies compared to others, because let me just say, quite frankly, Jurgen Klopp, before these past few recent years where they've started reaching EFL and FA Cup finals, where they've been defeating Chelsea left, right, and center every single time, but before they reached those FA, there's a long period of time that Jurgen Klopp had 6-7 great years at Liverpool, but he only had like a few trophies to show for it. One Premier League and one Champions League, despite the countless amount of successful seasons and dominant seasons that they've had and great football that they've played. He only had 2, trophies to show for because he's been really, really reluctant to put any sort of team that can compete in the FA Cup and EFL Cup, especially in the early rounds, which lead them to constantly get eliminated in early. And I think later on, he decided, he came to a realization, okay, I only have 2 trophies here at Liverpool. It's not good enough for what we have accomplished and what we're trying to be. So let me start taking the FA Cup and the EFL Cup seriously. And you saw them slowly. They reached, FA Cup. I think they won 2 EFL Cups. They won an FA Cup final against us. I know they won 2 EFL Cup finals against us. Crazy thing is all the games happen to be against us. He was able to get a few more trophies in his trophy basket before he left Liverpool. And Guardiola, he's always been good at it. So I don't think there's going to be some sort of lack of motivation for City. I think they're just going to go for it because of their ruthless nature that they've had under Guardiola, and I think that makes them deadly. But yeah, I think City will win this, and simple as that. And then we get the good thing, the real football to start, the Premier League starting very, very soon after that. React to some of the top soccer